Good afternoon, and thank you for being here for the dwelling of the Gallant. It's a beautiful day outside, and I think you all made the right choice because I've just had the opportunity to meet our 4 panelists, and these are incredible stories, and I'm looking forward to hearing from each of them. I'm Megan Morey. I'm the Vice President for College Relations, and I'd like to welcome you home to Williams. We're delighted to have you. So the history of women at Williams is pretty noteworthy, and this is a wonderful time to celebrate that. We'll be celebrating the 50th anniversary of coeducation in 3 years. Time does fly. Coeducation in higher education has transformed the global workforce, and currently at Williams, slightly more than 50% of the student population are women, and more than 50% of the senior staff are women. And as of July 1st, more than 50% of the Board of Trustees will be women. And we're working hard. We have a lot of faculty hiring that we're doing due to a wave of retirements in the next many years. And we're working hard to have the faculty and staff to reflect the student population as best we can. So it's a great opportunity and it's an exciting time. And we had some wonderful new faculty hires in the recent year, and I know we're welcoming some more this fall. So today's an opportunity to explore the pathways and accomplishments of 4 incredible Williams alumni. And we are delighted to hear from them. I'd like to begin by introducing Bobette Kahn, class of '73. Bobette was the first Black woman to graduate from Williams, but for many reasons, some of which I think she may share, she's not comfortable with the first Black label, which is often used to describe her time at McDuffie, Williams, Harvard Divinity, and her ordainship. This is a quote from the Harvard Divinity School's website. One of the first African-American women to receive the Master of Divinity, Bobette Reed Kahn, has been the first Black woman to graduate from Williams College and would be the second ordained in the Episcopal Church. After 1 year of doctoral study in Hebrew Bible, she left Harvard never to return. I love the Old Testament, she told the author, but I never wanted to be another first. You have no idea how hard that is. More on campus, Bobette's brother, Mike Reed, class of '75, who I believe is in the audience. He's a former vice president of the Office of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, was a freshman in Sage the year that Bobette was a JA in Williams F. She says that she could actually see directly into Mike's room from her room, which was not always the best thing. Dena Zaldua, class of '98. Dena is a proud queer, Jewish, Latinx woman who also came to Williams as a legacy, which in the 1990s was an unlikely combination. In the early 2000s, Dena joined the high-tech internet startup bandwagon that had steamrolled San Francisco and worked at Eve.com, an online beauty retailer also founded by a fellow Eve, for about 4 months, until Eve.com shut its doors, along with what seemed like every other .com in the city. She worked in development for 12 years at the National Center for Lesbian Rights, where as an assistant director of development, she raised $4.6 million per year for the nonprofit civil rights law firm. And we'd love to have you back in the development office. Faaiza Lalji, class of '08. Fiza and her husband, Emil Samani, set up a 6-week-long summer internship at the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto for a Williams student, grad or undergrad, studying art history at Williams. Faiza's year at the Williams Exeter program in Oxford influenced her decision to settle in London, and while at Exeter, Fiza wrote a short piece about the sustainability of the Vancouver Olympics, and fast forward 10 years later, she is deeply invested in the greening of the real estate industry in Canada, the US, the UK, and the rest of the globe. Tara Deonauth. Tara is a volunteer transcriber for a podcast that focuses on reading the Harry Potter novels as sacred, instructive, and inspirational texts. I just love this Williams. What a Williams education does, this is just incredible. Her senior year at Williams, Tara participated in the first congregation church Rainbow Scarf Project, where congregants knitted 46 scarves and made them available for free to anyone who signed a pledge to take action to prevent violence against LGBTQ teens, women, elders, people of color, and others endangered by bullying and the related risks of suicide. And in high school, Tara's debate team won over 200 trophies, medals, and plaques in less than 6 months. So thank you, ladies. We really appreciate you being here, and we look forward to hearing from you. So I think we're going to start with Bobette first. Okay, thanks.
I'm really not that ancient. It's just that my printer broke down as I was coming over here. So you'll have to put up with this instead. Thank you for inviting me. I really did hesitate to do this. As Sharifa can tell you, I hemmed and hawed and said, well, maybe let me think about it. And as you see, the title of my talk today is If I Had It to Do All Over Again. And I won't tell you until the end. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, not Shaker, but Cleveland. And for some reason, I always found that to be very important when I came to the East. Everyone said, oh, well, you really mean Shaker. And I said, no, I really mean Cleveland. Thank you kindly. We grew up in metropolitan housing, as a matter of fact, in Cleveland, and in a really nice but lower middle class community. And few people went to college, and if they did, most of them went to Ohio colleges. Certainly didn't go to the East. Now, most of you, because you are part of the Williams community or because you're a part of the Williamstown community, know about A Better Chance, better known as ABC. I am a product of ABC. And in 1969, I found myself involved in a lifestyle that was so drastically different than anything I had ever experienced in my life, and ended up in Massachusetts. When I traveled east for the 3 years at a private all-girls boarding school, I had never heard of the Little Three or the Seven Sisters. So how did I find myself as a sophomore transfer student starting all over at Williams? Well, you can actually blame it on Amherst. Because second semester freshman year, I conned my way into a Religion in America course at Amherst. It was a junior-senior seminar. Don't ask me how I did it. There were 8 men and me. And I was challenged. I was questioned. I loved it. And I realized for the first time in 4 years that I actually could find myself in a coeducational situation and survive. And truly, truly survive. But I loved Smith. I loved the environment. I loved the dormitories. It was wonderful. And I spent most of my freshman year taking over buildings at Amherst and UMass. So I really loved it. It was very, very interesting, very, very challenging for me. But I can honestly say that when I decided I wanted to make religion my major, because I decided it was the one thing I could study, the one area I could study for 4 years and finish and still love it. So I said to my professor at Amherst, where can I go to get this kind of education, this kind of challenge, this kind of fulfillment? And he said, Williams just announced they were going co-ed, go to Williams. And that's what I did. I had not been to Williams. I did not road trip. I had no clue whatsoever. The first week in May, I came traipsing up to the Berkshires. It was beautiful in the Pioneer Valley, and it snowed. I should have known better. That was probably the worst thing, and I thought, I don't really want to be here, but I came anyway. And it wasn't what I expected. I'm not sure what I expected, but it wasn't what I expected. There were about 90 women on campus. 45 of them, about 45, were transfer, and the other 45 were exchange students on the 12-college exchange. We were serious. I don't think many of us thought of ourselves as pioneers. We wanted to be at a place where we could learn. We wanted to be challenged. Well, listen, let me tell you, I was really challenged. Because as good as Smith is, and by the way, my twin daughters are rising seniors at Smith. So I firmly believe in single-sex institutions still. But I was, in a way, fortunate because I was the only black female in the incoming class. So what do? You're friends with everybody. I mean, it's the best way to do it. Girlfriend to none, friends to all. And it was fabulous. And so socially, it actually worked really well. My brother can tell you he came for interview visit, and he drove the van while we road tripped down to Smith. So it was great. The guys loved me because my friends would come up from Smith. So they were happy, or I'd take them down to Smith, and so it worked out really well. But it wasn't all peaches and cream, far from it. And as a matter of fact, after my first month or so, I really started to feel alone and isolated. And I finally went down to the student health center and basically said, I feel like the walls are closing in on me. I'm friends with people, but I'm not intimate with anyone. I don't know anyone well, and I feel like I'm drowning. And I can't tell you, I wish I could tell you the doctor I spoke with, but he said something wonderful, which I've remembered all my life, and he said, so who does Mother Confessor have to confess to? Because I would wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning to get guys up to make sure that they made their classes. Everyone had birthday cake made for them. Yeah, a little crazy. But that's who I was. That's where I was, and that's who I thought I had to be. And so I actually left after my first month. And a wonderful friend of mine here at Williams called his parents and said, can she just come and hang out with you guys for a little while? And I did, and it was wonderful, and thank you, Norman Jenkins, wherever you are. And I came back a better person. I came back ready to deal with the challenges at Williams. And there weren't many men, honestly, who resented us, but there were some. I lived in Mark Hopkins, and I distinctly remember one evening, one of my entry mates came in, and she was holding her face, and she had gotten socked by a student who said some pretty unkind things to her about women at Williams. So that, needless to say, was quite an unhappy experience for all of us, because we felt it strongly. But I have to admit that the isolation I felt wasn't because I was alienated. That was on me. That wasn't on anyone in my class. That wasn't socially. It was just my having to adjust to a very different kind of situation than I had ever experienced. And I have to tell you that in the 45 years I've been out of Williams, one of the things that I just thought about in the last 2 weeks in thinking about this presentation was that Williams has been, and I find this really bizarre, has been the most integrated neighborhood, community I've lived in 45 years. And I find that astounding. Now, mind you, I do happen to live on a 29-acre farm in the middle of nowhere, but just in general. Some of you might know that for 13 years I homeschooled my daughters because I felt that education was so important that I was not going to, number one, send my kids to school where there were lots of drugs and alcohol, and number two, I wasn't going to send them somewhere where education wasn't important and where the valedictorian went to UConn, and I have nothing against UConn, but that was the aspiration, go to UConn. And number three, I was not going to send my children to a school where there were 2 black families and 1 Asian family. Wasn't going to happen. I couldn't do that. And so we homeschooled. How did that make it better? Because we were then able to open up the world to them, whereas that wasn't impossible. And I'm very sorry. Yes, I probably could have spent $10,000 a year in preschool, times 2, but I wasn't going to do it. And I thought, I can do this. And that's the confidence Williams gives you, to know that things that you might not know you can do, you can do. You can really do. And so in the 45 years since I've left Williams, I've met some phenomenal people, but the people who have changed my life, affected my life, besides my family, have been Williams people. They've been either professors, Professor Van Auwerkerk, H. Gans Little, Reg Gilliam, phenomenal people. Nancy McIntyre, we all remember Nancy, those of us who started early. She's a phenomenal person, and most of us wouldn't have gotten through without her. But I think of my senior year, when I finally slid into senior year, moved away from everyone I knew, into a dormitory where I knew no one. And that was my best year ever. That was when I met Sandra Reed, who became my best friend. And those of you who were here 5 years ago, remember, she was dying then. So it was really hard on us. And that's where I met the guy I dated for a whole year. And that's where I also discovered how special my brother was. And that's probably, and I'm going to really embarrass him a lot, because several people have come to me and said, your brother has said that he wouldn't be at Williams if it weren't for you. He's 2 years behind me. And my feeling is that I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for him. Because Mike has been back to Williams and worked at Williams 2 different times. And the people who, it's my reunion, I swear, he knows many, many more people than I do. And it's wonderful, and I love it. And through the years, the inspiration that I have gotten from him and the courage. We've gone through some pretty difficult times the last 5 years or so, and I know I can pick up the phone and call my brother. And 5 years ago, when I came for a reunion, and then I'll stop. 5 years ago, when I came for a reunion, they were just opening up the multicultural, and I'm saying the wrong word for it, the Davis Center. And Michael spoke, and I stood there and said, "That's my brother." And it was all smiles, and I thought, that's what Williams does. That's what we do. We give confidence. And yes, if I had it to do all over again, I would.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dena Zaldua. I'm the class of 1998, despite what is printed in your program where it says I'm the class of 88, although I would love to look this good in 10 years, so it's fine by me. A little while ago, I got an email from Sharifa Wright in the Alumni Relations Office, and she asked me to speak at this event that I had never heard of with what I thought was a very strange name, and I've since come to find out it's taken from the lyrics of The Mountains, which just goes to show you how much I paid attention to that song, in what I believe is the typical Williams alum tendency to play down our accomplishments, because I have seen what y'all do, and I see the level of low-key. I genuinely could not imagine why on earth I would be asked to speak over the other unbelievably brilliant and highly accomplished women in the Williams alumni universe, and especially those with whom I graduated in 1998. So I would like to take a moment to acknowledge them. So many of you have served as inspiration for me and for others. In fact, you guys are the bright and the shiny title, the bright and the shiny title of my talk that's printed in your program. When I had to submit my talk's title to Sharifa last week, I still didn't have one. So I used a working title with my fellow Williams women in mind. One of the things I love about Williams people, at least my Williams people in my experience, is that we're less concerned with the shiny as we are with what's bright. We Williams alums are more likely to end up being not shiny celebrity types. Not that there's anything wrong with that, Abigail Savage. I kid, she's totally brilliant. But rather, more often, we're the bright and brilliant and bold folks who are going into our communities and doing amazing work. It was going to be a great talk. I was going to talk about my work at social justice nonprofits for the last 18 years and my work now managing an intersectional feminist research center on the University of Oregon campus, because I strongly believe it's important to acknowledge the quiet work being done by so many people and so many Williams grads to change the world in so many different ways. But as it happened, there was a different Williams story that I needed to tell. The title I would use now would be My Williams is Family. So Sharifa did eventually convince me that the story I have to tell about my relationship to Williams and the world around me was what she had in mind, but I'm also a big believer in women, people of color, LGBTQ people, and others owning their power and their value. So I will also say I'm deeply honored to be here. And I find it very meaningful that I'm getting a chance to be on campus with our soon-to-be very first woman president, a Jewish woman who studies diversity and inclusion, no less, on site. It is sometimes breathtaking to be witness to history. So for these and so many reasons, I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share my Williams story with my Williams family. And when I say Williams family, I mean that both figuratively and actually quite literally, because my Williams story is a story about family. First, my Williams friends are, just like the classic, old college buddy trope, truly my sisters and brothers from other mothers. We found each other as students and walked each other through our respective Williams experiences, and in that foundry, we forged bonds and love that are unrivaled by any others. We look out for each other, we cheer each other on, we support each other even from afar. We make cross-country visits to meet new babies and stand witness to each other's marriage ceremonies. We go months and sometimes years without seeing each other, but whenever we do, we pick up as if we were still in the snack bar at the table in the back. There's also this funny thing about being a Williams alum, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. An ex of mine used to snarkily refer to Williams as the cult, and while he meant it as an insult, there's truth to that, and I always took it as a badge of honor. Yes, we are loyal to each other. I've had people leave notes on my car because of the Williams sticker on the back. I've been chased halfway around a mall by the mother of a future Williams student after she saw me walk by with a Williams t-shirt on. And I have gotten connections to more than one job and more than one apartment through Williams alums I have looked up when moving to a new city. Even if you yourself did not come from a family with the means to provide a safety support net, I have always taken comfort in the fact that no matter what, Eves look out for other Eves. It's just what we do. I even named my dog Baxter. I'm not kidding. One of the things that I find most beautiful about my Williams experience is that the value of my Williams education does not lie in my diploma, nor in my career, and definitely not in my bank account. The value of my Williams education is in my Williams friends, my family, whether we met as fellow undergrads, as student and professor, or as alums. They are my connections and my community, a large branch of my connectedness to this world and our global community. And I also strongly believe that I got my Williams education less from my professors, although I adored so many of them and learned incredible things in their classes. And as a friend was commenting last night, I got the absolute best education imaginable here. But what I really value in terms of when I look back is the education that I got from my peers. So when I said my Williams story is a story about family, I really did mean it. I am a legacy kid, despite also being the first-generation daughter of my Colombian father, who immigrated here in 1975 after he and my mother met, married, and lived in South America, which I also note my mother was disowned for by her mother. My mother's maiden name is Fish. It's an old New England wasp name, like the Mayflower kind of old, Hamilton Fish kind of old. The first Williams College Fish family graduate, as far as I know, after asking Sharifa to dig through the archives, thank you, it was Edwin Fish of the class of 1910. From there, subsequent generations of Fish men graduated from Williams with regularity. The apparent policy in the Fish family for years was that the boys went to Williams and the girls went to Smith. This photo is from the Williams senior book of my great-grandfather, Irving Duncan Fish. Until that is, Mary Fish, now Mary Fish Arango, came along. Mary is my aunt, my mother's younger sister. As it happened, Aunt Mary was born at exactly the right time to matriculate into the third co-ed graduating class of Williams making Fish family history. She graduated from Williams in 1978. She's in the audience today, 20 years before I would. In fact, Mary might actually deserve the credit for my having become a Williams alumna in 1998. This photo was taken of me when I was about 2 years old, and you can't really make it out, but I am wearing a toddler-sized t-shirt that says Williams 1998 on it. Like, I don't know that I actually had a choice, but in addition, my grandfather, my mother's and Aunt Mary's father, Irving Duncan Fish Jr., not only graduated from Williams in 1944, but he also retired to Williamstown in 1988 to a sweet little house on Meacham Street. So I have memories of many summer vacations here during my childhood when my parents, brother, and I would come visit from California. I loved eating in the snack bar in Baxter Hall and exploring the stacks in Sawyer Library. I thought those double-decker carols were like the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. He lived in Williamstown until he died in 2004, so he lived here while I was in school here, and we saw each other every so often. We weren't super close. In fact, my grandfather was quite conservative, and I often wondered what on earth he might see, hear, or learn about me as I lived my life as a student here on the Williams campus. And I lived my life the only way I've ever known how, openly and as authentically as I can. Back then, I was discovering myself and my place in the world, and the Williams world, and it was here where I came out as bisexual, and I came to consciousness as a Latina and a woman of color. None of these were things that I thought my grandfather would have thought appropriate or worthwhile endeavors to pursue during my college years, but I've always been pretty clear, even back then, that shame has no place in my life. So I followed my heart and my path, and I hoped he wouldn't ever bring it up if he ever heard anything about it. I think he did realize I was some kind of gay eventually, and tried very awkwardly once to tell me in a really roundabout way that it was okay by him, which, looking back on it, I find sweet, and I'm grateful that he tried his best to love me as I was, even if it was challenging for him. In another bizarre twist, at least to me, several generations of deceased fishes, including my grandfather and my mother's mother, are buried in West Lawn Cemetery here in Williamstown. Aunt Mary and I were just there yesterday, in fact. So because of this photo, and because of kind of being steeped in all things Williams throughout my childhood, I refused at first to even apply. My mother asked me to do it as a favor to her, so I did, reluctantly, and now here I am, giving this particular talk to all of you over this reunion weekend in this building on this campus. I'm very grateful to my mom for that nudge, as annoying as it might have seemed to me at the time, so thanks, Mom. So I did end up becoming one of the Williams class of 1998, and as it turned out, in the end, Williams is in my heart. As it also has turned out, though surely not the end, my having gone to Williams and graduated from here means that for the first time in its history, the Fish family has, amongst the at least 8 Williams graduates in its lineage, a bisexual, Jewish, Latina woman who's the daughter of an immigrant and a native bilingual Spanish speaker. If that is not the true story of this country, the story of the inevitable bending of the arc of justice, I don't know what is, because our future is female, and it is brown, and it is queer, and thank goodness for that. If anyone can save us from ourselves, it just might be them. We can see it in the power of our youth leading the way right now. Emma Gonzalez, anyone? So earlier I told you that the Fish name goes back to the Mayflower. To be clear, I did not include that piece of information as some kind of ridiculous and laughable humble brag, but so that when we got to this point in the story, you could more fully understand the significance of what it means that I, of all people, am now a 20-year member of the Williams College Society of Alumni. Ultimately, my Williams story is really a story of the heart. Williams is in my blood. Not like I bleed purple and gold and never miss a football game, although it is nice to see us win, but as in my family and my history and the place where I came of age and became me is Williams. And because of that, Williams is inside me and a part of me forever. I like to think that parts of me are in Williams too. And not for nothing, but I kind of hope that this little guy who turned 7 on Tuesday, the light of my life, my son Julian, carries on the torch and might someday become an Eve himself someday, bending that arc just a little further towards our ancestors' wildest dreams. Thank you and happy reunion.
Not easy women to follow. I want to thank Williams for inviting me here today. It is a special honor to come back to this place to not only celebrate my 10-year reunion, but to also connect with all of the other classes and alumni here this weekend, and especially the 3 women with me here today on this stage. I have been extremely fortunate to have experienced and learned many things over the last decade. But at the age of 31, I will not pretend that my story is complete and that what I am going to share with you is a retrospective of a life's work. Hardly. What I do want to share, however, is my journey so far, the work in progress life that I am trying to build, and the impact that I am trying to have. I also want to emphasize that my journey is unique to me, and what my faith and spiritual search have taught me is that the questions of who I am and what is my purpose are questions that each of us should strive to answer over the course of our lifetimes. The power that can be harnessed from connecting with one's true self is immense, and if you take one thing away from what I say today, I hope it is this. Williams was the first place where I really started to explore these questions, where my innate passions were nurtured and where the seeds of potential purpose were planted. At Williams, art history was a subject of great merit, worthy of study by the brightest students and taught by the best professors. It was relevant, it was dynamic and important to society. I had sought cultural encounters my whole life, visiting any and every museum, studying and sketching whatever I saw. Here in the Purple Valley were a wealth of collections, spaces, teachers, and opportunities for the inquiring mind. I was overcome, and I joyfully participated in as much as I could. I took classes, went to lectures, saw exhibitions, engaged with speakers, and as I gained more knowledge, I began to write and give tours at WICMA, organize extracurricular events with professors through the Art Majors Committee, and bring scholars and artists to campus through the 1960 Scholar Program. But what was perhaps even more unique about the art department at Williams was that students could study both the history of art and architecture and the making of it. And so at Williams and during my year at the Williams Exeter program at Oxford, I did. I studied American art and architecture, British art and architecture, Egyptian art and architecture, mosque architecture. I took art and architecture studios and photography, and I even exhibited and had my efforts critiqued. I got the full interdisciplinary experience, and it culminated in an art history and practice thesis that used all of the skills I had learned and all of the experience I had had outside of the classroom, traveling for winter study and summer fellowships, to create and curate a virtual exhibition and accompanying catalog. Williams is amazing, right? So what did I do post-college? I will largely skip over the part where I worked in entry-level, intern-type positions in various arts organizations. What I will say is important about this period, however, were the assignments with the Museum of Historic Cairo, the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, and the Vancouver International Center for Contemporary Asian Art that ironically took me outside of the museums themselves and into their neighborhoods. Studying mosque and housing history, restoration and conservation, community development and environmental planning solidified my specific interest in Islamic art history and architecture, and gave rise to the feeling that I might be able to reach more people through the built environment as a practitioner than through museums as a historian. Put simply, I was seeing that not everyone visited museums. This was a turning point in my thinking. It did not mean that my love of art history diminished, but I was keen to explore the world of practice and its enabling force. Who I was and what my purpose was evolving. I pursued professional studies in urban planning and real estate at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard, which was one of the few studio versus policy-based programs in the country, and was therefore well-suited to my background. There, I began to understand better the critical issues facing cities in areas of housing, the environment, transportation, and infrastructure, for example, and how as a developer and decision maker, one could potentially positively contribute to thoughtful city building that addressed major societal concerns. And this is where my family's real estate business came in, which I had not anticipated being a part of, but which suddenly seemed like somewhere I could apply my skills to make a difference. And in my 6 years there, I really feel that this has been the case. I was initially mentored through the early stages of the planning processes for 2 large-scale neighborhood revitalization and district energy projects. The focus of these projects was largely on rewriting existing policy and on promoting sustainable, mixed-use places, The projects were in Vancouver, after all. I was keen to support the work with research with the University of British Columbia on greening the real estate industry. And in this, I first saw how research could inform practice. My work in the UK, and in the particular London, where I currently live and work with my family, has built on these early learnings to grow into something I feel is much more far-reaching and also personally rewarding. Our development vision and pipeline is something that I've been able to shape to reflect my own values and beliefs around social inclusion, equal access, connectivity and growth, and best practice in design and placemaking. I've been able to push for the creation of a new business and urban model out of an existing industrial land and self-storage portfolio and proposition that strives to be a part of the solution to London's acute housing crisis and high cost of living, which only continues to worsen as its population grows. Through this process, I have worked with industry bodies such as the Urban Land Institute and the British Property Federation's residential groups to lobby national, city, and local government to craft new rental housing policy that allows for housing to be designed and delivered at more affordable tenures and at better quality than that which exists today. And as this policy gets integrated into the new London plan with the new mayor, with the help of our planning and design teams, we have worked tirelessly with local boroughs across and especially in suburban outer London to change perceptions about rental housing, to fight NIMBYism, and to advance proposals that seek to deliver places with a mix of uses where people can live, work, store, and play. In our 5th year of setting up this business, I am proud to say that we have 2,500 homes and 1 million square feet of work and storage space and planning, with ambitions to build 10,000 homes, giving thousands more people access to London and its diverse neighborhoods. Advancing this ambition has not been straightforward, and we have a very long way to go yet. But what I can say is that in endeavoring to create a business model that meets a very real need, it is hugely satisfying to start to see even the smallest positive impact that you can have on people's lives, and on expanding thinking and research around the future city of London and its direction as polycentric. I would not be able to finish my remarks without explaining finally how my story has come full circle, and how outside of my professional work, I remain connected to the art world and to museums through my promotion of Islamic art and architecture and the culture of the Muslim world. London is a global hub for the heritage of Islamic civilizations, both historic and contemporary. And as such, it has been easy to harness this wealth of resource. But perhaps what has not been as easy is changing people's perceptions about Islam, and in particular, reaching audiences that have the most distrust and the least knowledge about the cultural threads that really weave us and unite all of us. This has been my hope and undertaking, however. Through work with the Aga Khan Museum, the British Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and Delphina Foundation, I have made it my mission to use programming and education generally to talk about the art through artists, curators, academics, specialists working in the field, produced by Muslims across time and space, and to illustrate the diversity, plurality, creativity, and contribution of a people that today make up 1/4 of the world's population and are very often misunderstood. The Aga Khan Museum is the first museum in North America dedicated to the arts and cultures of the world of Islam. Later this year, the British Museum will open its new Gallery of the Islamic World, which will both highlight the vastness of its collections from the Middle East, Turkey, Central, South, and Southeast Asia from the 7th century to the present, and illustrate the link between these cultures and those of the ancient world, Mediterranean, and Europe. The V&A has one of the world's greatest collections of Islamic art and organizes the Jamil Prize, an international award for contemporary art and design inspired by Islamic tradition. And finally, Delphina Foundation is London's largest provider of international artist residencies and began by promoting artists from the Middle East and North Africa. I feel exceptionally privileged to play a small role in the work of these institutions. Generally in my life, I have been the recipient of huge blessings, and the greatest of these gifts was the gift my parents gave me of self-discovery and actualization. I am sure that my story will take many more turns, and I do not know where and how it will end. But I am truly grateful to them, and now to my husband and life partner for encouraging me to go on this journey. To my grandmother, until her passing last October, had a Williams calendar pinned above her bed, saying the mountains reminded her of Machacos, where she grew up. I think she would have liked to have been here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's an honor to sit among this incredible group of women, particularly now as Williams welcomes its first female president, which I know we've talked about a little bit, but also welcomes its first woman chaplain, which I am just so excited about. You'll see in a little bit why I am particularly excited, I promise. So my story is a little bit winding. Right now, I'm interning as a chaplain in a hospital and a residential community for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'll be starting at Divinity School in the fall. So, quick disclaimer, I really don't intend to preach at any of you today. I'm actually not sure I know how to. I haven't taken a preaching class. But if I inadvertently do, I apologize. And in fact, speaking to all of you here today feels a little bit strange. For one, all of the talks that I've given here at Williams and since graduating have been extremely technical. I majored in math and economics, and for the last few years, I've been running a data department for a nonprofit based in Boston. So you can imagine, math, numbers, data. I'm missing my security blanket that is the Excel spreadsheet, which usually hangs in the backdrop of most of my presentations. So for my comfort, I'm just gonna put this up here for a little bit while I get adjusted. This is very different for me. The second reason that it feels strange to talk to you is because most of my most meaningful interactions have happened with eye contact, and it's kind of hard to see eyes from here. These most fulfilling and meaningful moments have usually been in small groups or just one-on-one. I think I'm definitely a product of the Williams tutorial system. And those micro interactions of human connection are what have formed me. It's the depth of those connections that I hold dearly, and I want to share a little bit about that with you today. But before I do, I want to show you something I've been so excited about for literally about 4 days. So I mentioned that I'm a chaplain in training who also majored in math. And earlier this week, my supervisor, Stuart Harrell, explained a model of pastoral care, really just a model of communication and connection, using a graph, and I felt my heart grow about 3 sizes. So to make this the slightly technical talk that I'm used to, on the x-axis, we're gonna have depth. So as we go down, we're finding more depth. And on the y-axis, we have time. The first section is chit-chat. This is just sort of scratching the surface, talking about the weather, trying to tell a funny joke, but just getting pity laughs, as happens with most of my humor. Chit-chat. Then as time goes on, there's conversation, getting a little bit deeper, getting a sense for how you're doing, how the other person's doing, what's going on, just gathering some facts. A little more time passes, and there's care, empathy, being with, standing alongside. It's those times when we feel heard and seen. Allow more time to pass and go a little deeper, and you might get to communion. These are the moments that touch us, the moments that touch something within us, the moments when we feel connected to and can see more clearly into something within ourselves, within the other, or within something that might be beyond us. What I like the most about this idea of communion is that in all of this talking, communion might be the one place where we find silence. Henry David Thoreau, in addition to talking about Williams, I was surprised he wrote about other things too. He once pondered, could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant? I think part of what Thoreau is getting at is the mystery of the world around us and the mystery that we are to ourselves and to each other. And if we could unravel that mystery for even just an instant, what a miracle that would be. This model, like life, isn't rigid. We might explore each depth in a single conversation or over a lifetime. We might bounce between these modes of connection and discover new ones. Or we might get to care and communion immediately, like those moments when we walk into someone's home, someone's office, or walk into someone's arms and immediately feel that embrace that brings us into deep connection with the other. At Williams, I felt the depth of this sort of connection profoundly and often. And I think I learned how to experience it here and search for it here. Shortly after I graduated, I sat in my beloved chaplain, Rick Spalding's office, and I lamented the majors that I had just graduated with, economics and math, expressing my desire to pursue religious studies. I felt stuck, and I felt worried that I would pursue an advanced degree in economics, look back and think, why did I do that? And in my confusion and despair, Rick shared a story with me, and he told me about Saint Columba. Saint Columba sailed away from his home in Ireland in 563 in self-exile, declaring that he wouldn't return to Ireland until he had saved as many lives as he had taken in the sectarian wars. He sailed away and finally landed on the island of Iona. He docked his boat, he looked back, and he can no longer see Ireland. Today, people make a pilgrimage from the monastery on one side of the island to the other side where Columba docked his boat. At the bay, you're supposed to pick up 2 rocks, toss one in, and keep the other. Rick gave me one of those rocks and asked me, what was I leaving behind and what was I taking with me? In the silence following that question, 2 things bubbled up for me. First, I would leave behind this feeling of being tethered by expectations that belong to a former version of myself, that belonged to others around me, that weren't truly my own. And I would take with me possibility. If nearly all arrows in my life are pointing west and there's one pointing east, I would hold on to the possibility that that one arrow points to. From this conversation and many other with Rick, to my Muslim chaplain here at Williams, Bilal Ansari, who I so desperately hope to emulate, to Lauren, a fellow EIF, also my best friend, who threatened to send in an application for me to be a contestant on The Bachelor if I didn't apply to divinity school. To my mom, who has never wavered in her support of me, no matter what path I'm on. And to the many, many others who have so generously loved me and who I have had the privilege of loving. I'm just so tremendously grateful to have been able to walk through some of these modes of connection with them. I'll leave you with Mary Oliver's poem, Mysteries, Yes. Words that inspire and frame for me the stories I hear and the stories I tell. She writes, "Truly we live with mysteries too marvelous to be understood. How grass can be nourishing in the mouths of lambs, how rivers and stones are forever in allegiance with gravity, while we ourselves dream of rising. How 2 hands touch and the bonds will never be broken. How people come from the delight or the scars of damage to the comfort of a poem. Let me keep my distance always from those who think they have the answers. Let me keep company always with those who say, look, and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sharifa. I work in the Alumni Relations Office. It's also my 15th reunion this year. And I am really happy that you are all here, and I'm particularly grateful to the four of you for taking the time. Some people took some convincing. But this is one of my favorite things that we do at Reunion every year, and I'm always so moved, and I always learn so much, and I'm always reminded of why I care so deeply for this place and this community and the people here. So I just want to give you a word of thanks and let you know how meaningful your stories were for me, and I'm sure for everyone in the room today. We are running a little short on time, but we always like to take questions at the end of this event. So we'll take a couple, and then we will see you off to the rest of your reunion journeys and experiences.
I was the 12th college coordinator for Williams, and then Dean of Freshmen when the first co-ed classes came. And this is kind of an epiphany to see the products of all that over this time. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. What's your name?
Lauren Stevens.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Thank you, all of you, for sharing your stories and your different journeys with us. As someone who's in Tara's class, in class of 2013, one thing that I've been thinking more and more is what you wish you would have told yourself as a young alumna from the college. And so thinking back to yourself, whether it was your first year out of college or your fifth, what words of wisdom that you've gained since would you share with young alumna today? Not putting you on the spot.
I can go first and share exactly what I think Emily, Sarah, Mikhail, and I talked about on Stony Point last night. So I kind of have a pre-scripted answer that is all of your answers, not really mine, which might give you guys time to think about your answers. But what we were talking about yesterday was that first year out of graduating. I think it was true for myself and true for my peers. It is an incredibly lonely year. Williams is a place that has so much that's scaffolded for us and so much support that is in place. I think the people who are hired by the institution are specifically here to help us. And that's something as a student you don't really think about, that the people who are in the administration are here specifically to make our time easier and happier. None of those people exist in the real world. I wish they had told me that.
I think I would say to my younger self, and probably myself today, is don't take life and don't take yourself so seriously. Life is very long, and in the moment, in the kind of inexperience of youth, it is very easy to feel that life goes very slowly and that everything that happens is very definitive and lasting. But what I think you can hear and see from all of these stories today is that each person's journey is, it unfolds over time and has many turns and has many openings and changes, and if one is open to that and willing to let serendipity do its work, then I think life will go down a lot easier.
I don't know if is this on?
Yeah, you good?
That's a good question. I could give a very long answer. I think I would say two things. The first is, if you haven't figured out what you would do if you knew you couldn't fail, you need to figure out the answer to that question. And then whatever that is, that's your North Star. And if you go your whole life without doing that, you may have regrets. The second thing I would say is, regardless of whether it was you or your parents or scholarships or someone else who paid for your Williams education, what you got for that ridiculously exorbitant amount of money is not so much the paper that's hanging on your wall, but a network of people who are here for you. And it's up to you to either use it or not use it. So use it. It's here for you. It's here for taking advantage of. When I get emails or phone calls from recent graduates or people who are thinking of matriculating, I always answer. I have a lot of emails in my inbox, but those are emails that I will always answer.
Well, I left Williams and went straight to graduate school, and a lot of us did that. And I can honestly say that not only the confidence, but the actual ability to do came from Williams. I went to Harvard, and you'll enjoy it. It's changed a lot. But what I discovered my first year, I breezed through. And I breezed through because of Williams. And that was a good thing, because what I didn't have in the Cambridge community was what I had here at Williams, which was a community. And it's something that you need to make sure that you fall back on, because you will need it. And you should take advantage of it, because it's very important.
Ooh. Well, so I think can you see the hands again? So you look hesitant. Do you want to ask a question? I thought I saw your hand. Oh, no. So we have two questions in the back, and then I'm going to send you off. So please, go ahead.
I'm Sue Hamlin, novel class of 83, and I remember Dean Stevens well. Thank you for the scaffolding and support that you mentioned. I don't know how to phrase this question eloquently, but I think it's an important subject, and it is the voice of a woman and the importance that plays in education and in career and in life. I heard Madeleine Albright on TV one night, and she said something that took me by surprise, which was she found her public voice at age 55. And that came from one of the most accomplished women in the history of our country. So I just wondered, I know there's not much time, but I just wanted to raise that subject, and if anyone would care to comment on whether that issue is important to you, or how it related to your time at Williams, or what you're looking forward to in the next 10 years.
I would just say, I think for me, and probably for most women, I think finding your voice is a lifelong process. I found a voice at Williams, for which I'm very grateful. And speaking of scaffolding, for me, I just built upon it. I'm 42. I have gone through various stages of finding my voice. I'm in the midst of another one right now, and hopefully, we all just keep getting better and better, and the voice keeps getting stronger and stronger and truer in pitch.
You know, it's really one of the advantages of a liberal arts education, and especially at Williams, and that is that there's a willingness to change and to recreate yourself. And I have found over many more years than you that I don't have any, I actually don't even think about it sometimes. I just transition to what I need to be and who I need to be at the time, and what is called for. I was speaking to someone earlier today about the Episcopal Church and the needs, the various needs of the Episcopal Church. One of my other lives, I was a fundraiser. Now, I'm a deacon in the Episcopal Church. I should be standing and preaching, but instead I'm fundraising because that's what needs to be done. And that's what I've learned from Williams. I was a police officer and for 3 years, and that's how I paid my way through graduate school. That's what Williams allowed me to do. I was comfortable with it. And that's just who we are. And I'm 66 years old, and I'm looking for my next voice.
Thank you. So, one more question, and then, unfortunately, we do have to part.
Hi, I'm from the class of 78, and I actually came because you said you're going to speak about the class of 78 and in the brochure. And I actually really had a comment in response to your question. And then when you asked yours as well. And I will tell you that there are some very interesting studies that have shown that women who are very bright and well-educated of our generation are always worried that we're going to be found out, that we're not as bright and we're not as accomplished. And Bobette is putting her head down, but my wish for you all, and I have 3 daughters, one of whom is a Williams graduate, is that you all recognize that you are bright and well accomplished, and you will fail, and you will grow from that failure and learn, but it will be part of you, and some of that resilience you got here at Williams, and some of it came, and that's why you were at Williams. But the second part is that I wanted to say your graph up there, although we're not allowed to, I took a picture, because it's something that's so critical to understanding and would be my answer to your question, which is part of the exploration in life and the understanding as you grow and develop is that those 4 conversations, those 4 types of relationships and friendships and work and other interactions are all important, and that you need to have all of them, from the chit-chat, which is very basic. They won't be the people in the hospital with you when you need them, but they are there for your day-to-day, to the people you have conversations with who make your life better, to the people you hold the hands of when you don't expect, as a chaplain, who actually really care about you, to the people who become part of your most inner circle and the communion and give you the strength, that I hope that someday when you come back for your 40th or 50th, you will have had all of those relationships and see the value of them and how they allowed you to grow.
Thank you so much. I think that is the perfect place to end.